These candle cozies are great for upcycling empty glass jars and leftover yarn. It's a great pattern for advanced beginner knitters. This is part of the 9 quick and easy knitted gift series. The whole series is linked in the description. Enjoy! You're going to need a glass jar and some double pointed needles or a circular needle if you are using magic loop, and some worsted weight yarn. This is cotton yarn from Paintbox Yarns. Take this pattern as a guide because your jar might not be the exact same measurement as my jar, so you may need to kind of modify the pattern to suit the size of your jar. I'll tell you how to adjust the pattern, but just keep that in mind. So this little jar is 2.75 inches across, that's the diameter. Circumference is 8.75 inches. Height doesn't really matter. Now, I also knit up a larger cozy using a big jar of pasta sauce that I picked up from the grocery store. The diameter of this big pasta jar is 3 inches, and the circumference is 10.75 inches. And I'll let you know the cast on for both of these sized jars. Okay, but today we're going to be knitting up a smaller cozy for this guy. All right, so for this size glass, I'm going to cast on 40 stitches. So we're going to start with a 2x2 rib, and that's just going to hug the top of the jar. 40 stitches is a guideline for my jar. You'll need to cast on a multiple of 4 stitches to knit 2x2 rib. Okay, so cast on like 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. All right, so I've got 40 stitches cast onto one of my double pointed needles, and I'm just going to spread these stitches out across 3 needles. If you need a refresher on how to knit with double pointed needles, I'll throw in a tutorial up top and in the description. So I'm just going to spread these out relatively evenly. I've got 40 stitches, so 40 into 3 is like 13 or something, 13, 14. One of the needles will have 14 stitches on it. All right, so these 3 needles have roughly an equal number of stitches on them. So now I'm going to join in the round. Now we're going to work 2x2 rib, which means we're knitting 2 stitches and purling 2 stitches across the round. So this first stitch is always a little bit tricky, so there we go. Great, just tighten that up. So I've knit 2, and now I'm going to bring the yarn up front and I'm going to purl 2. And then bring the yarn to the back and then knit 2. Bring the yarn up front and purl 2. And if you need a refresher on how to knit rib, I've also got a video on that linked above and in the description. Okay, so we're just knitting 2x2 rib across the whole round. So I've just finished 1 round of 2x2 rib, and we're just going to do that all over again. So we're knitting about 1/2 inch of 2x2 rib in the round. So again, it's just a knit 2, purl 2 across the whole round. So I'm going to do an increase round, and we're going to increase by 2 stitches. So right now I have 40 stitches, and I need to increase to 42 stitches so that it can fit into the pattern that we're going to do. So what I'm going to do is just knit 2 stitches, just like this, knit 2. And then I'm going to do what's called a KFB. KFB means knit into the front and the back. So I'm going to knit into the front of this next stitch, and then I'm going to turn and knit into the back of that exact same stitch, but through the back loop. So you can see it going into the back loop now. I'm wrapping my yarn again and pulling out a second stitch. And now 1 stitch has become 2 stitches. So that's a KFB. I'll show you how to do that again. So I'm going to knit into the front stitch, and then I'm going to knit into the back of the same stitch. So I'm going to go right up in there and around, pull out a second stitch, and that's a KFB. And then now I'm going to knit 20 stitches. So here is my 20th stitch, and I'm going to do another KFB. So I'm going to knit into this next stitch, into the front, pull out a stitch, and then I'll kind of turn my needle and knit into the back of that same stitch. So I'll bring my needle into the back of that stitch and put my yarn around and pull out a second stitch. And there we've just increased 1 stitch. And then I'll just knit to the end of the round. Okay, so the reason why we did that increased round is because I need my stitches to be a multiple of 6 in order to knit the eyelet rib. Just to be a bit clearer, this is the 2x2 rib that we just knit, and this kind of lacy pattern is the eyelet rib. So the 2x2 rib requires a multiple of 4, and the eyelet rib requires a multiple of 6. So that's why we needed to increase 2 stitches from 40, which is a multiple of 4, into 42, which is a multiple of 6. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. If you're kind of modifying the pattern, just keep that in mind. Cast on a multiple of 4 and then increase to a multiple of 6. So the first, second, and third round are the exact same. We're going to do a purl 1, so I'll bring my yarn up front, do a purl, and then we're going to knit 5. And that is the repeat for round 1. Bring the yarn up front, do a purl, and then knit 5. So we're going to do that across the whole round. Purl 1 and knit 5. For ease of knitting, I like to put the repeats onto one needle. So for instance, I had a purl 1, knit 5, purl 1, knit 5, and then here was my purl 1, and my knit 5 is kind of separated across 2 needles. So I kind of want them to be on the same needle because it just makes knitting a little bit easier when we get into the yarn overs. So I'm just going to move them over to one needle. And you can do that if you're new to double pointed knitting. You can move your stitches across your needle. Doesn't really matter as long as they're on the needle. One needle can have more stitches than the other needle. Okay, so let's keep going. We're going to do a purl 1, bring the yarn up front, purl 1, and then a knit 5. So let's do that across the round. All right, so that is our round 1. And round 2 and also round 3 are the exact same, okay? So we're gonna repeat round 1 a total of 3 times, okay? We're gonna bring our yarn up front and do a purl and a knit 5. All right, so rounds 1 to 3 are the exact same, purl 1, knit 5. And then we'll work round 4. And now we're ready to work round 4, which is where the interesting things happen. Okay, so we're going to start off with a purl 1. So we'll bring our yarn up front and do a purl 1. And then we're going to do what's called an SSK. Now SSK stands for slip, slip, knit. And this is a decrease. So we're going to decrease by 1 stitch. I'm going to take my right needle, go into this next stitch, as if I were going to knit, and then just slide it off the needle. Then I'll do the same to this next stitch. Put the needle in as if to knit, and then just slide it off. Okay, so I've got 2 slipped stitches on my right needle. Then I'm going to use my left needle and go into these 2 stitches that I've just slipped. I'll kind of go in from the bottom. Here we go. And then I'm going to knit those 2 stitches together just like this. There we go. And that is our SSK. All right, so now we're going to do what's called a yarn over. Now a yarn over is exactly what it sounds like. We're going to take the working yarn, bring it up to the front, and that is our yarn over. Okay, so no yarn over, and here's a yarn over. No yarn over, yarn over. So yarn over, and then we're going to knit 1. So we're going to knit 1, and you can see that the yarn over right here, after I've knit that next stitch, that yarn over has become cemented into our knitting. So this is an increase when we do a yarn over. All right, so what's next? We're going to do a yarn over again. So we're going to bring the yarn up front and we're going to do a knit 2 together. So we're going to take our right needle and insert it into these next 2 stitches. Just push our needle in and then knit those 2 stitches together as if they were 1, and now those 2 stitches have become 1 stitch. So this is another decrease, and this decrease moves towards the right. All right, so let's do that one more time. Just do a quick little demo of this knit 2 together. So again, we have our yarn over, and then we'll knit 2 together. My right needle will go into these 2 stitches like this, and then I'll knit into those 2 stitches, and bam, that is our knit 2 together. And that is our repeat. So we will do that all over again. We'll bring our yarn up front and do a purl 1, whoops, purl 1, and then we will do an SSK. So we're going to slip 1 as if to knit, slip another 1 as if to knit, and then slide our left needle into these 2 stitches like this, bring our yarn around and pull out a stitch from those 2 stitches, and that is our SSK. Then we'll do a yarn over, bring the yarn up front, and we'll do a knit 1. Then we'll do a yarn over again, and we'll do a knit 2 together. So we're going to knit these next 2 stitches together as if they were 1 stitch. So here we go, push our needle in, and knit 2 together. Did we get it? Did we get it? Nope, let's do it again. Knit 2 together. And that is our repeat. Okay, so we're going to repeat this across the whole round. And this is why I suggested that you keep a multiple of 6 stitches on your needle so you can complete the repeat on 1 needle instead of like having to do a yarn over or a slip slip knit across the needle joins. And there we go, knit 2 together. And that is our round 4. We have completed our Eyelet repeat. So we're going to repeat rounds 1 to 4 all over again until our Cosy, when it's worn on our glass jar, until it touches the base. Once it reaches down to the base, then we're going to change tactics and do a little something else. Now, if you're using double pointed needles, you can't really fit the Cosy onto the jar, unfortunately. So if you have a pair of circular needles, you can move them onto your circular needle and then try the Cosy onto the jar just to see where it's hitting. So I've done quite a bit of knitting, and I've moved my knitting from my double pointed needles over to a circular needle so that I can try this knitting onto my Cosy. If you don't have circular needles, that's all right. You can just kind of place your Cosy against your jar, and I can see that it kind of hits the base right now, so it should be the right length. But I'm going to do the extra step of putting the Cosy onto my jar. Here we go. Yes, the knitting just hits the base of the jar, so we're ready to move on. So now I'm just going to move my stitches back onto my double pointed needles, and then we can start working the next step. We're going to switch to 2x2 rib, so the rib that we just started with at the very beginning. And the reason we do this is because this is really nice and stretchy rib, and it will fit nice and snug across the bottom of the jar. We're going to do a knit 2 and then a purl 2. Bring the yarn up front. Whoops, that looks twisted. Bring the yarn up front and do a purl 2. Bring the yarn to the back and do another knit 2. So how long do we knit 2x2 rib for? So you are going to periodically try the Cosy onto the jar. Once our 2x2 rib covers most of the base of the jar, then we are going to decrease. When I look at the top of the Cosy, it does kind of come together really nicely like this. So now we are ready to decrease and finish up this Cosy. We are going to knit 2 together across our entire round. So here we go. Insert my right needle into the first 2 stitches on my left needle, and then just knit those 2 together. And I'm going to do the same for the next 2 stitches. Okay, we're just going to knit 2 together. And the next 2 stitches, knit those 2 stitches together, knit these 2 stitches together across the whole round. So when I'm done with this, I will have 21 stitches. I'll knit the last 2 stitches together, and now I've decreased to 21 stitches. We're going to do this all over again by knitting 2 stitches together across the whole round. So I'll knit these 2 stitches together and then 2 stitches together, and the last stitch I'm just going to knit. Great, so now I have very few stitches on my needle, and I'm going to cut off a length here, and we're just going to insert this strand of yarn into all of the stitches, thereby securing the stitches in place. So typically I would just bring the yarn over to the next needle. So I'm going to grab that stitch and bring it over the strand of yarn, and then bring this over the strand of yarn, Bring this one over the strand of yarn, over the strand of yarn, and when I get to the end of the needle, I'll just pull the yarn through and then bring it onto the next needle. Bring this stitch over the strand of yarn, over the strand of yarn, over the strand of yarn, pull it through, and then the last needle, we'll bring the yarn over the needle, drag the stitch over the strand of yarn, bring that over that stitch, over, and drag the yarn through, and now all of our stitches are secure. I'm just going to try this onto my jar and see how the fit is, and oh, it looks perfect. It hits right at the lip of the jar. It's so cute. So once you've tried on your cozy and it fits really nicely on your jar, then we can just do the finishing touches, grab our tapestry needle and just insert it into the top of the cozy, thread up the yarn onto the tapestry needle, and then we'll bring the yarn through to the inside and then turn our cozy inside out. And then we'll just kind of weave in the ends of this yarn onto the inside of our cozy. Just go into a couple of these little purl bumps, grab our scissor, snip that right off, and we'll do the same to the little yarn end on the top of the cozy. So we're just weaving it in to the wrong side of the knitting, snip that right off. And now our candle cozy is complete. How cute is that? And here is my candle cozy. Adorable! Beside my big one, I think it looks like such a cute little set. Drop in a tea light and enjoy your candle cozy.